Hello all, I welcome all of you to the free OpManager training season. This is going to be a 4-part training season, and before we dive deep into the presentation, I wanted all of you to confirm whether you can hear me and see the presentation as well. Please confirm by commenting an S in the webinar chat panel. Once I receive a couple of confirmations, we would be able to proceed further. Thank you so much. I've received a couple of confirmations that the screen is fine and the voice is clear. Let me introduce about myself. I'm Sharath, product expert working with OpManager for a couple of years now. For the next 1 hour of time, I hope I would be able to share the knowledge regarding OpManager and hope that would be absolutely valuable for you all. As all you know, this is a 4-part training series, and today it's all about discovery and classification. This is about how do we get the devices into the inventory and how do we classify them and start for the monitoring. And on next week, 17th of July, we have got monitoring the server's performance metrics, and for 24th of July, we have got network performance monitoring and network maps. And the last series of this season is on 31st of July, where we would cover on fault management and IT automation. For the benefit of the larger audience throughout the globe, we have doing this at 2 time zones. One is at 6:30 a.m. GMT, which is now, and the other one at 11:30 a.m. EDT as well. So if you've got any of your colleagues who have missed to join by this, they would definitely be able to join another session at 11:30 a.m. EDT on the same day, or you would also be sent out with the presentation and the recorded version of this webinar to the email within 24 hours of time. Also, you can go ahead and have a look at all the agenda and the training materials at opmanager.com/training.html, and you would also be having a recorded version of the webinar available right there. Let's talk about discovery and classification, part 1 of this series. I'll give you a brief on what is the agenda for today. We would talk about prerequisites of installing an OpManager, the network monitoring solution. What are the prerequisites for installing them? And how do we understand the total network infrastructure? And what are the challenges in device discovery? Most commonly, there are a couple of challenges where network administrators or server administrators would come across. So let's talk about what are the common challenges and 5 important steps to simplify the discovery process with the help of OpManager. And at last, we would also talk about a couple of real-life use cases which would absolutely help you all in understanding how this would be efficient and how this would be powerful enough with the real-life cases. Let me talk about the prerequisites for installing OpManager. The system requirements for installing OpManager for 500 devices or lesser would be approximately an 8 GB of RAM is required, a quad-core processor or even higher, and a minimum of 40 GB of hard disk is required. When I talk about the databases we support, yes, we do support the third-party Microsoft SQL database. In case if you've got a Microsoft SQL server, a database already in your organization, OpManager is very well seamlessly go ahead and then sync with that, and then the data collected would be dumped into the MS SQL as well. Apart from that, we have got PostgreSQL. The PG SQL comes bundled with it for free, while the installation you would be able to have PG SQL bundled with it as well. When I talk about the installation platforms we do support both on Windows and Linux platforms. Maybe only when the Linux platform installation comes into picture, you may not be able to monitor the Windows devices with the help of WMI protocol, but still then that can be metrics can be achieved with the help of SNMP protocol even. So you would also be able to have a look at the link below, the hardware and software requirements link, which will help you to understand even more about the requirements of the system in case if your devices monitor are more than 500. Moving on to the next is about installing OpManager would require a couple of ports to be opened on the firewall. Let's see what are the ports are important and which needs to be open in your firewall. Most common protocol we use is SNMP for the communication with the devices, and that needs port number 161 to be open. For the traps, it's 162. Regarding the Windows machines which uses WMI protocol, that uses 135445 and 5000 to 6000 bidirectional ports, which needs to be open as well. For Telnet and SSH, we have got 23 and 22 respectively. And for checking the availability of the device, you can go for ICMP, or even the TCP port check is also possible, where those respective ports has to be open. For syslogs to be collected from the firewalls, you can go with port number 514 and the basic web server ports 443 and 80 for HTTPS and HTTP respectively has to be open on the firewall. Before we get installing OpManager, we have to make sure all these ports are open in the firewall to get the seamlessly installed OpManager. Next is about understanding the network infrastructure. When we talk about a network monitoring solution like OpManager, we have n number of devices or n number of performance metrics or n number of metrics to be monitored or metrics to be captured in the network monitoring solution. For that, at level 1, we have got to understand how the network infrastructure is built. Based on that, we would be able to move on to the next level of discovering those devices and which are important. To understand the network infrastructure better, I've got a clear picture here on a campus network, which is most commonly available in all the organization in the recent times. I'm just trying my best to replicate one of the real-time scenario here. I've got a central IT building with an administrator right here, and there are a couple of buildings like building A, building B, building C, and building D associated to the central IT building. As you can see, each building has their own administrators available, and each building would have the set of their own devices. Say for example, building A is really an old building which have a couple of servers, network devices, firewalls, and everything available right there. Building B is completely of a virtual network, for example, and building C is again a heterogeneous network which has a couple of all type of devices with multiple vendors, multiple models, and everything. And building D, let's take an example. That's a very new building which is supposed to be synchronized with central IT building, and this is a new branch where it may not have a complete infrastructure. It's a growing infrastructure with a couple of devices, and then we do not have much information about what type of the devices or what is the IP address of the devices available. Let's take this as a scenario and let's see how this would help us. A network topology of the central IT building which we are talking about would approximately look like this. So right from the internet to the end devices you receive, you would have a couple of devices in between, and this is how your connection would look like. Say we might have network devices 75 in numbers, SQL servers, Exchange servers, and closely about 650 desktops and about 20 network printers. Let's talk with the help of this network topology in the central IT building. Let's talk about what are the important or most commonly faced challenges while discovering the devices by the administrators. Because we have multiple challenges we would come across, and we must really need a tool, OpManager, on how that can be eliminated. So first we would talk about what are the most common challenges we face and how do we just eliminate that in the later point of this training. Challenge 1 is about, first we have got to make sure we have to be prepared enough for a network discovery, because if an organization has only one administrator, I would definitely say that that particular organization is so blessed, because that is nowhere available in recent times. Most commonly, at least 90% of the organization throughout the globe has multiple administrations or multiple administrators. If in that case, you would literally be very confused on which administrator has which role or which administrator has control of a couple of devices. So the first point you've got to keep in mind for a discovery is we can add administrator users in OpManager. So then only by adding a couple of administrators, they would be given a privilege to add their controlled devices, which is in their scope, and you would be also have a clear picture on the reports in later point of time to understand who added which device at what time, when, and multiple information like that. So first is about adding administrative users. Next important step to be prepared enough is about ensure all devices are reachable from the OpManager server. Once the communication from the OpManager installed server and the end device is ready, you're good to go for the discovery. And next is about credentials for the respective device or the network has to be created in prior, because we use credentials like SNMP or WMI or any type of credentials to communicate to the device to get the information like performance metrics. So the credentials has to be ready in prior. Once we are prepared for the network discovery, we will just move on. Let's talk about the challenges we might face. I'm here taking an example of a CSV file where we are importing the list of devices with the help of the CSV file, and what are the challenges network administrators or server administrators would come across. Because CSV is most commonly used as importing device methodology to get the devices being inventorized. You might have a CSV file which has closely about 1000 entries or maybe about 700, 800 entries altogether. But you must be very clear, you have only certain devices to be monitored or critical devices only to be monitored. Not all devices present in the CSV file need to be monitored. And in case, what happens if you import all the devices without applying of filters? It would definitely cost you a license, and it would also add up unnecessary load to the server by adding all 700 or 800 devices in CSV, where in case you need only 150 or 200 to be added. So those would absolutely cost you a license, and it would also add unnecessary load to the server. So here, this is one of the most common challenge when you use a CSV, and we will talk about how do we overcome this particular challenges with the help of OpManager later. Let's talk about our next challenge in post-discovery jobs. Once the discovery is being successful, administrators would try to configure the devices in OpManager of their requirement. I have got a clearly explained a task here. Say the administrator wants, every time when he tries to add a SQL server, he wanted to set up a same set of services, processes, and application monitors to that. He wants that to be automated. How do I automate this process after the device is being discovered? Another task looks like, I have grouped all MS SQL servers in a business view or a group for our India site, and more servers will be added in the future. Can I place these servers in the India group automatically once that has been discovered? Is another question, is another task where a server administrator has been given. And also he would like to set up a notification profile to trigger an email notification whenever a service down happens. A service down alarm triggers, that has to be sent as a notification profile. Like you see, there are a couple of tasks, multiple tasks are available for a server administrator for a SQL server right here in example. So let's say you've got many SQL servers, that would be really a very difficult task or a big challenge for an administrator to go ahead and keep on adding individual metrics on each servers. So this is one of the most common challenge again after the discovery is being done for a SQL server for here as an example. Our next challenge on the post discovery is about an interfaces. When we talk about interfaces on a network device, say the administrator, the network administrator says, I only want to discover the Ethernet interfaces from my switches. Can I select the required network interface type while adding the device itself, while adding the switch itself? That's the most common challenge, because whenever a network administrator is trying to add a switch or a router, there will be a couple of interface types like Ethernet interfaces, loopback interfaces, and a couple of other interface types, wherein he really do not want to monitor the other types. He only want Ethernet interface types. Is that be possible? This is one other common challenge for a network administrator in terms of interface discovery. One other last challenge I'm talking about here is automating your device addition, about the scheduling the discovery. Every organization is literally growing day by day. So today we see a network with very limited amount of devices, say for example, but in later of 2 weeks of time or a couple of months of time, you will definitely have your network being grown. So those devices, is that really need to be added manually every time when a device is being introduced into the organization, where that can be even scheduled for a network discovery, and this would automatically take care of. From that, you can just make sure all the devices in the network can be scanned successfully, and those can be fetched as a reports on understanding when that device has been introduced in and that has been inventorized for the monitoring. Because if a schedule is not available in a real-time monitoring solution, you will definitely be undergoing a challenge where whenever a new device is being added into your organization, you have got to go manually add those devices in the tool for monitoring. These are a couple of challenges we have come across which would be faced by server and network administrators in common when in terms of discovery in OpManager. Let me take you through 5 important steps to simplify these discovery processes in OpManager with the help of quick demo in the product. So this is how an OpManager inventory would look like. Getting into the inventory, this is how your OpManager would look like once the devices are added. Let's now talk about adding users. First is about adding the users in OpManager. Getting into user management from settings, you've got add user where you can just add a couple of users based on the requirement. You can just go ahead and then add users. I've got a couple of users who have been already added who have got an administrator privilege, operator privileges. So once this has all been set, you can just go ahead and then get into discovery and get the credentials ready. So you can just add credentials. You can add multiple credentials like SNMP, V1, V2, Windows, WMI credentials, VMware credentials for your virtual machines, and a couple of other credentials as well. Once you're ready with a couple of credentials, that would create a credential library for you. So you have all the credentials being listed down right here. Once the credentials are ready, we are now good to go for a profile. As we spoke about an example, we've got a CSV file import. Apart from these, we also have a couple of other methods of discovery as well. So the most commonly used CSV file import is what we are talking about now. So CSV file import have certain categories to be necessary or mandatory fields. You can just have a look at the sample file and check how it looks like. I've got an example or a sample file which looks like this. So device name, display name, type of the device, the category of the device, and even in the information which you want. But these 3 headers are quite very important and mandatory. You must create a CSV file with the help of device name, display name, and device type. Once this is all ready, you can just go ahead and then start adding that. So here I have got a couple of printers, servers, switches, and desktops. So I'm just go ahead and then browse that particular file. And here comes the fields which I need to configure. So the device name, I take it from the device name, the display name as in display name, and the type of the device, I can take the header device type from the CSV file. Once it is ready, I can just move on to the next. Wherein the server administrator's requirement is not to add a desktop here, because we have seen in the network topology of the central IT building, closely about 650 desktops are listed. No administrators or no server admins would really want desktops to be monitored, because that would absolutely cost you a license, and that is not being so critical. Only the servers, SQL servers, and a couple of other devices are required, wherein desktops can obviously ignore. In that case, you've got a discovery filter where you can just go ahead and then click on add discovery filter while your input is available. Set an action as ignore devices. Select the type as category, which equals to desktop in our case. So what happens here is, from this CSV list, if any of the category equals as desktop, all that would be ignored while adding the device. So this is quite interesting and easy for the administrators to avoid adding unnecessary devices. Once a filter is absolutely ready, moving on to the next would start listing me the credential library. So you can select multiple credentials, and then moving on to the next gives me the rule engine. The rules is about adding multiple tasks while the device is being discovered. Let me guide you through one particular rule which we have discussed. Adding a rule. Say one of the server admin wanted MS SQL servers from India, has to be set in a perfect way. So here, this is all based upon the criteria and the action which we wanted to take care of. So I've got a couple of criterias. I can just go with the DNS name or the category, type, vendor, IP address, etc. We are going with the DNS name. Let's say if my DNS name equals anything which starts with or SQL dot and the name of the SQL server, say for example, if this is the case, I want a couple of actions to be taken care. As we discussed, I want a process monitor to be associated. I want a service monitor to be associated, and also I want this particular device to be added into a site called India, and also I want a notification profile to be added whenever a service goes down. These profiles has to be created in prior before this, so you can just go ahead and do that as well. So once these tasks, as you can see right here, the actions are multiple. You can see a couple of actions which is happening for any DNS name which starts with SQL dot. So this is very, very important and quite easy for every administrators, because it is not required that you can add your SQL servers and then go ahead and then individually move them to the group, add process monitors, add service monitors, and associate a notification profile in later. Think about if you've got 60 or 70 SQL servers throughout India, if your organization is so big. So it's very difficult for each administrators to go ahead and then add them regularly. So just by creating one rule, this would take care of multiple tasks with one single click. So you can just include this particular rule while discovering itself. So any of the devices which starts with SQL dot in the CSV which you've given is being matched, that would automatically do the actions which we have discovered. Once this has been done, moving on to the next about interfaces. By default, the interface discovery is disabled. You can just go ahead and then enable that, and as per our choice, you can just enable only the Ethernet interfaces to be discovered. And even if you want even to be drilled down with, you wanted to have only the Ethernet interfaces which only are live and up now, that has to be discovered, and the Ethernet interfaces which are down is not required for a discovery. That can also be possible, where you can just go ahead and then select admin status is up. So only the admin and operational status being up for an Ethernet type of an interface would only get discovered. Once done, you can just go ahead and then give a profile name, a CSV import, say for example. And you would also be able to execute that right now to get the devices being imported, or you can even go ahead and then schedule them at any point of time. We've got a couple of other input methods as well, IP range or a couple of other things. You can just go ahead and then schedule it weekly, daily, monthly. So any new IPs which has been found can automatically get added. So any new device which gets into your organization automatically gets into OpManager for monitoring. So this is how you can just go ahead and then add a particular discovery profile, which is quite very simple with just 5 steps. This is quite very easy for an administrator to move on. So these are the steps which would help you to simplify the process. So the next is all about real life use cases. What are the real life use cases which we have come across is what I would be able to discuss with you. I think that would definitely be a great help, where you might also come across such cases, so you would also get prepared on those. Let me talk about case number 1. Automate device addition by receiving SNMP trap messages in OpManager. I've got a typical case here. One of our customers from United States have a radio devices which would be installed to their customers' environment at every 3rd week of the month. And they would also have a couple of random times, really meaning a different time zones, different times, different days in a week. So those particular set of operation they would have for the radio devices, which they have to install it on the customer places. They've got a couple of places like Colorado, California, New York, San Jose, Denver, couple of places they would go ahead and then install those devices. They wanted OpManager to automatically identify whenever a device is being installed at the customer place. So that can be achieved by 2 methods. One, add multiple discovery profiles with possible network range. So you would have a clear picture of a range of an IP address on which the network radio device would fall into. So for that case, you've got to add multiple discovery profiles, because if that falls into 1 or 2 or 3 range of network, that can be quite easy for an administrator to add as a discovery profile. In case that would not work, because they have got a couple of network ranges, closely about 30-40 range of networks, it is quite difficult for us to create discovery profiles multiple methods. So that, to address that, we have brought a new feature called enable the device discovery via SNMP trap. So whenever the device has been installed and that is capable enough of sending an SNMP trap to OpManager server's IP address, immediately we would address that trap and add the device automatically once we receive the trap as well. To get that done, it's very simple. You've got to get into settings, discovery, and then you can just get into discovery settings where you've got discovered devices via trap. You can just go ahead and then enable them simple, save that particular operation. Once this has been done, you would be able to have any devices which is sending out an SNMP trap from the end device to the destination as OpManager IP address would be captured, and that would be added for monitoring. I've got another case which is quite interesting to discuss with you all. So the one which you saw a little bit earlier about the network topology of the building D, where I've told the building D is quite at the growing level. It's a new building which is under the construction or maybe under the network construction. They do not have much information about what type of device they've got. They do not have a CSV file with all the details. They do not have much information of what type of the devices. So how do you add those particular devices without much information into OpManager for monitoring? The case is all about, I do not have complete list of device details for building D's network, but I know the IP address of the seed router. Is there a way to discover devices in OpManager using the router's IP address? Absolutely possible. Here the seed router here is about the core router of the particular building. Obviously, there would be a core router for each and every setup. From the core router, there would be the network starts, and from there you would have another router connected. From there you would have another switch being connected, and there are a couple of hubs, and then it goes to the end device. So if you are really aware of the seed router or the core router's IP address, that is possible. By adding only the core router, you would definitely be able to discover the devices which are close by, and then you would also have their dependency can be created automatically. Let me show you that right now for you. Getting into settings, discovery, you've got layer 2 discovery. This is a network discovery model where you can just provide the name for the discovery. For the building D, here is what I've got to provide the router's IP address. The router mentioned here is about the core or the seed router's IP address. Once that has been provided, that would ask you for a range of an IP address, for which you've got to discover. So I provide a range as 192.168.1.2 to 1.100. So I'm really not sure about what are the devices in this particular range, but still I want that to be included for monitoring. Once that has been added, you've got a couple of discovery mechanism. Use Cisco discovery protocol as CDP, LLDP, IP route, FTP, ARP, or a couple of discovery mechanisms we use, and we communicate to the IP address 192.168.1.1, the seed router's IP address, with the help of the SNMP credential, and then we would be able to discover the neighboring devices and we would be able to map them. You also have an option to set an uplink dependency for these particular devices. Let me talk about uplink dependency in detail. Uplink dependency is nothing but you've got a core router being discovered. From there are the rest of the devices being connected. So you would have a parent device and that would have a child device. So the connection between a child device and the parent device would be drawn. The dependent of an end device would be obviously a switch or a router. So those clear picture of your network can be given into a real-time graph, and then you would also be able to import them. Once the layer 2 discovery is being successfully initiated, once you start discover, it would take a couple of minutes to go ahead and then talk to all these ranges and get the information. I would just save time and show you how network discovery would look like. I've just created one earlier. So this is my main office network discovery, which I've done with the help of a core router. So I've got, this is how the neighboring devices would be connected. So you can just see a couple of devices on how that looks like. So this is a complete map. You've got a couple of methods. You've got radial tree method, node link or a balloon tree structure to really picturize how this would look like. And here is the beautiful option you've got. Just by getting this ready, you can just go ahead and then click on settings, import devices, and select all the devices to be inventorized to start monitoring, or you might need only critical devices out of this particular range to be categorized. So you can just go ahead and select a couple of HP switches and maybe a couple of Cisco switches only you want that to be monitored. Select only those, go ahead and then set discovery. Only these devices would get inventorized and start their monitoring. So this is how you would be able to successfully get the network topology of the building D being involved into a discovery with quite simple core router or a seed router's IP address. The next we would talk about as a use case 3 is about adding devices from ServiceNow to OpManager. I have seen many customers who is using ServiceNow widely. So those ticketing tool or help desk tool, ServiceNow would have an asset management module where you've got a list of devices being inventorized already with that particular tool. So those devices which is already been inventorized in ServiceNow can be brought into OpManager for monitoring with just quite simple REST API method. We have got our API being exposed in api.opmanager.com. You've got a couple of APIs to add devices. You can just find them right here. So once you get this API link ready with you, you can just generate that API key from OpManager right here. Just getting into settings, it's got a REST API. Just clicking on REST API would expose your API right here. You can just click on I icon. You would have your REST API ready. You can just even regenerate the key, or you can just make use of the same key. Once this key is ready, I would let you know how you can just import the devices. I've got a script which is written. This can be achieved with the help of the script as well. So I've got a text file which says the devices which are already being in the asset management module would get added with the respective protocol. So I've got one particular device with a protocol. So likewise, I've got multiple devices being added automatically with the help of the protocol. It communicates. This is from the ServiceNow. Once this is ready, I have got a particular script which would talk to the ServiceNow.txt, the text file, and we have got an API key which we have got from OpManager, and you would be able to use this particular API and add device. This is the add device API which we are using. So you can just use this add device API and execute this particular script at a regular time. So any device which gets or which is there in the ServiceNow would be talked to this ServiceNow.txt file, and the script would do the job in adding the devices into OpManager. This can be achieved quite simple with the help of a script being ready. So there is how we have our REST APIs being exposed. You can just have multiple REST APIs available. You can just have a look at that as well. The next is all about updating the interface or the device properties with the scheduling of the discovery. This is one of the use case which we have come across very recently, and this have sorted out the customer's requirement absolutely well. So the customer has a couple of device properties like IP address or the RAM size, hard disk size would get changed at a common time. Say for example, the customer would have bought the server at a RAM size of 32 gigabits at the beginning. So maybe once the server is being used intensively, maybe the RAM could have been in a requirement for an increase in the size of the RAM, maybe to 64 or in even a higher RAM size would have been needed in that particular case. If that is the case, so is that it is required where administrators have to log into OpManager and manually change the RAM size? Absolutely no. You can go ahead and schedule a discovery, and OpManager would take care of that. Any changes like device properties as you listed, or any interface properties like name, speed, description, or status can also be updated by just scheduling a discovery. In case of interface, yes, maybe by today you would have only 100 megabits of link available. Maybe in future the bandwidth is not sufficient. You would just go ahead and then increase the bandwidth size of that particular interface. So the speed has to be automatically updated. It is not required for a manual task. How do we do that? Get into settings, discovery. You've got existing device method as a discovery input. Select the existing devices. You can just select devices, and maybe you can select all devices or a couple of devices where you wanted to reschedule the process, schedule them once, and just go ahead and move on further with all these steps as we already saw. Just moving on to the next. Here is a place where you can just go ahead and then schedule. So I'm just scheduling for my existing devices. So I want this to be checked for all these devices in my OpManager. If any properties of the interfaces or the device is being changed, I want them to be updated every week if there is a change. So, and that should be happening on Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning. So that can be scheduled in such a way, and then you're done, and then you would be able to go ahead and then name it. This can be also sent as a report to the email addresses as well. These reports you can just available right under discovery reports or as an email. Here you can see last run was at 147 days ago about the name of the profile and which user have added, how many devices have been added or deleted or in the different status. So here is what we are talking about: the user, the administrators. So you might have a couple of other names available here. So here is a place where you would be able to identify who added the device at what time and when or which type of profile that was. This would be able to help you out in adding the device at a regular period of time and updating that properties as well. One last case is about how do I fix devices getting discovered as unknown. The OpManager users who are listening right now might have come across a status called unknown for a device being discovered. That could be of a server, router, any type of the devices. They could have faced a status called unknown. So the ones who really not aware of what unknown is, let me show you how an unknown device would look like. Getting into the inventory, this is how an inventory of OpManager would look like. Once the device has been successfully discovered, this is how it would look like. Type or the category, it would say exactly what type it is. This falls into a desktop category. This is a router category. And there are a couple of ones you look like unknown category. So you would not be able to understand what type of device this OPM-dev10 is. Either it's a server or is it a desktop or what type of device it is. This is where we are talking about now, unknown devices. Top fixes for this kind of failures. First, make sure all the recommended ports is open in your firewall, because if those ports are not open, the communication from OpManager to that particular device may not be executed. So at that point of time, it's quite very difficult for OpManager to identify or communicate to the device to know what type of the device it is. The second top fix I would suggest is about update the password in OpManager, because at the time of discovery, you would have a password being associated with the device, really. So in case if the password is being changed by any chance, say for example, many organizations have their passwords for the servers with the password policy as 90 days. So every 90 days, the server has to change with the password. So if that is the case, at the day one, there will be a password associated, discovered successfully, fine. If there is a schedule of the discovery is being rerun again, obviously we would not be able to communicate to the device and there happens a problem. So we tag them as unknown. So in case if you wanted to go ahead and then update the current password, you can just get into settings, discovery, and then getting back to the credentials, you have all the credentials being listed. Just click on the respective credential, and then here is the place where you can just go ahead and then edit and retype the new password, save them. That is absolutely fine. Also, we've got another feature called test credentials, which we've brought in. This is a feature which would help you out in testing all the credentials of the device regularly at a period of time and help you out to know whether the credentials associated with the device is passed or is that being failed. You can just select based on the choice. Say only I wanted to check for my India sites. You can just go ahead and then select the devices from India. Go ahead and then select next, and then you can just set to an email address, name a profile, execute now, or even schedule that at a regular period of time. I would really recommend all the administrators who are watching this to go ahead and then schedule this to understand whether the device associated with this is credential is working fine or not. And that would look like a credential list like this. So you can see a couple of ones are passed, a couple of ones are skipped because the device is being down, and there is one which has no credentials being associated, and there are a couple of other reasons like say failed, and that is because the device is not responding back because it doesn't have a proper time needed. It's a request timed out to this particular device with this credential being associated. So you can get a clear picture. You can just even take this as Excel or export this to PDF as well, and this would also be emailed at the time when you configure this. So when you check this very often, at least every week or every 2 weeks, or every month, you will understand why the performance matrix is not collecting the data, or why the device is being falling into an unknown category. This is quite a good practice in nature. You can just try this out as well. And there would be another last possibility being a device fall into an unknown is the device templates may not be available for the respective model. So we categorize the device with the help of the device templates. We call them as templates. We have got closely about 9,000 plus device templates right now in the latest version, where we use most common devices being used in the market would be added in the template. But there are a couple of chances where that would be available in your organization may not be available as template. But even not to worry about, you can go ahead and then add a template in that scenario. That's very quite simple. Say you have a device model which is not available in the list, that you can just add a template to get them categorized successfully. Clicking on add template, name the template, select the vendor. Say for example, I'm just saying Cisco XXX is a new model which comes up, and then that is not available as a template. So you can just go ahead and then add a new template on your own as Cisco, and then you categorize on what it is. Once this is ready, you can just get the device identifier, because this identifier is so unique for each and every model of the device from each and every vendor. So these unique address, either you can just get them from the vendor itself directly, or OpManager even provides an opportunity for you to query the device right from here. Just select the device which falls into an unknown category already, select the respective SNMP credential and go ahead and then query that. The OpManager would obviously query that and get the device identifier for you. Once the device identifier is ready, add them. If required, add some monitors, save the template. So any device of the same model gets added in future, that would absolutely be categorized successfully. So these are some of the common use cases which we come across. Hope this would have been absolutely helpful for you. The next I'm talking about is a new feature which we have added very recently, that is grouping. So you might have not come across the grouping very often if you're an old user of OpManager. Maybe if you just start upgrading your OpManager, you will definitely be able to find grouping. This helps you to create groups based on the sites and departments or customers or any type of your choice. You can group any number of devices or any type of devices. And thresholds can also be set based on the custom groups. Dashboards can also be used for the groups. And filters are absolutely available for the groups in widgets and reports. Let me quickly show you how a grouping feature would look like. So the grouping is available under inventory groups. You can just have a look at how the groups can be created. I've got a group which is for critical devices. I've got a couple of servers, a couple of routers, and a switch under my critical devices group. There are 7 members in this critical group. Likewise, you can create a group, provide a name of the group, say only which I am taking care of. Shots control. Say for example, I am taking care of a couple of devices, and that I wanted to have a look at how those status of the groups are. This would help you to check the health of the complete group or health of individual members inside the group as well. So either you can just group them by devices, interfaces, or you can create even subgroups. I'm creating by group. Either you can go manually or even by criteria, as we saw earlier, like you can just group by the name or anything of your choice. Just manually grouping a couple of devices which is in my control. I can just group them as such, and then I can just select the important or the main member of this particular group where the status of the complete group has to be decided on. So I select a particular device and then move on. There is another group created for me. So here you would be able to get the status of the group, members and count, type of the group, and everything. You can just play around with the help of these grouping, and you can just come across with beautiful features. As mentioned, you can just use these groups into widgets and dashboards. Say for example, you want to see the devices by downtime only for my set of devices, or only by critical devices, the group which you've created. You can just see right here, select them right here, make use of that. When I talk about reports, you have that here as well. Earlier you would have only a couple of filter options. Say I want devices by CPU utilization, and I want to filter that only with the help of my group alone. So go ahead and then use it. So I've got only my device being filtered, which would be absolutely easy for me. This is a very new feature. You can just play around and then just let us know about the same as well. So I would also be welcoming you all for a free seminar happening in Sydney and Melbourne next week for IT operations management about OpManager and applications manager. In Sydney at Four Seasons Hotel, it's happening on 16th of July, and in Melbourne on 18th of July, it happens at Crown Promenade, Melbourne. You can just have a look at this particular site, get registered, and be there at Australia for a free items. Thank you all for listening. I've got one of my panelists available, Mr. Surendran, here to discuss about the most common questions we have received today and couple of other questions to help you out for the larger audience. Over to Suren for questions.
Hi everyone, this is Surendran from the OpManager team, and now we'll be looking into the common questions which has been raised in this training program. The first question, what happens to the devices that are not reachable during the network scan? When this happens, the devices would be categorized as not monitored state, and it will be waiting for the next time period, and whenever the device is reachable, it will get the information and it will store the data. This is how the stages will happen. The next question, can a device be added just for the availability to ping test without SNMP or WMI? I have the vendor devices on my network that I do not have the SNMP or WMI on it. I just need to do a ping test for these devices. Yes, we can. Whenever you add a device without any credential, if the device is reachable, we'll categorize those devices as an unknown category, and we'll be monitoring the availability of those devices. The next question, after adding devices, will there be an impact if I remove the discovery profile? No, there will not be any impact on the discovered devices unless if you have a scheduled discovery on the profile, it will not affect the devices. Moving on to the fourth question, can you hide the devices that are no longer in service without deleting them? At present, we cannot hide the devices, but there is an option to unmanage the devices in OpManager. I'll just show it to you in the setup as well. I'll show you an example on how to unmanage the devices. We have to go to the inventory and just select the device which you want to unmanage and click on the more options and just give unmanage. So this is how we could unmanage the devices which are not in production or not in use. So we'll move on to the next question. Does the application capture a history on when the devices are added or deleted? In OpManager, we will be capturing the data on when the device was added, but we do not have any records on when the device was deleted, because if we delete something from OpManager, the entire traces of the device would be removed completely. I'll show you an example on the setup as well. Over here, can you see discovered time? So with this column, you'll be able to see when the device was added and how long it's been monitored in OpManager. Sixth question. When discovering interfaces, is there a limit on license? No, we do not have any limitations on the number of interfaces to be monitored, but for an essential setup, you should not monitor more than 10,000 interfaces. That's the limitation. Moving on to the next question, how can I turn off the VMware events auto discovery when we have a lab environment which has over 500 VMs? We do not want to monitor. Yes, there is an option to disable the auto rediscovery of the virtual devices through an vCenter. I'll show it to you on how to do it on the setup. You have to go to the virtualization. Go to settings, discovery, credentials. and go to the VMware credential which you have created for the vCenter and just disable auto VM discovery and save it. So once you have done this configuration, automatically the auto rediscovery of the VMs in this vCenter will not happen. Moving on to the next question. How can I avoid device duplication during discovery? For example, I have a router configured with 2 virtual IPs. This gets added as a separate 3 devices when adding it in OpManager. I'll show you how we could avoid this. In OpManager, you have an option to enable the unique display name. You have to go to the discovery settings and enable this option. Use the unique system display name. When you enable this option, every device, in spite having 3 IPs or 2 IPs, the unique name of the system is going to be the same. So whichever device is reachable during the discovery, the first device, it will add that device, and the other devices will not be added because the display name will be the same. And this is our YouTube channel in which you could subscribe and see all the how-to videos and how demos on the OpManager as well. And this is our help website, and if you need any detailed documentation on how configurations can be done with the pictorial representation, you could visit our help document website. And this is our forum link where our OpManager community and the customers will be having a technical discussion on the topics which is going on, and you could get more information on it. And if you need any technical support from the support team, you could send us an email at opmanager-support@manageengine.com. And if you want to call us and get in touch with us, you could dial in into our toll-free numbers as shown in this. And I also invite you to our next training, which is happening on 17th of July at the same time, and in which we'll be covering the availability and server performance and virtual servers and other topics which are mentioned below. Thank you all. If you have any other questions, you can let me know.